Today's story is about King Nebuchadnezzar and another dream that King Nebuchadnezzar had. Well, King Nebuchadnezzar, the Bible says, was asleep and he had dreams and he woke up and they so bothered his mind that he couldn't get back to sleep. Have you ever had anything like that? Where you woke up from a dream and you couldn't get back to sleep because it was just running through your mind? That's exactly what happened to the king. And so who do you think he called? Well, he called the magicians and the sorcerers and the enchanters and the astrologers. He called them in and he said, I've had a dream and I want you to interpret it for me. Well, the astrologers came to him and they said, "O king, live forever. Just tell us your dream and we will interpret it for you." Well, that's how it normally worked. Normally, the king would tell his dream to his enchanters and to his sorcerers and to his astrologers and to his magicians, and they would interpret the dream. Then they'd tell him what they thought it meant. But not this time. This time the king said, "This is what I've firmly decided. I have decided that you are to tell me what I dreamt, and then you are to interpret it for me. And if you do not do this, I have decided that I will kill you, and I'm going to smash your houses into little tiny pieces. But if you do interpret it for me and you tell me my dream, then you know what? I'm going to give you gifts and rewards and honor, and it will be wonderful." Well, the astrologers, they looked at each other, they looked at the king, and they said, "O king, King Nebuchadnezzar, that's great. You tell us the dream and we'll interpret it for you." But King Nebuchadnezzar wasn't fooled. And he looked at them and he said, "I know what's in your mind. You think that you can trick me. But you know what? I have firmly decided this. You think that you can buy yourself some time. In fact, I think that you're planning to deceive me and to trick me and to lie to me, because you're hoping that somehow the outcome will change. But you know what? If you do not tell me what I want to know, there's only one penalty for you, and that's death. So now, tell me what I dreamt and interpret it for me." Well, the astrologers and the enchanters and the magicians and the sorcerers, they knew that they were in big trouble. They had no idea what the king had dreamt. And so they said to the king, "King, there is no man on earth who can do what you have asked. No king, no matter how great and mighty, has ever asked this of any enchanter, any magician, any astrologer. What you're asking, it's too difficult, O king. You know what? No one can do this except for the gods. And the gods, they don't live with people." Well, King Nebuchadnezzar, he became furious. He was so angry. Do you remember? King Nebuchadnezzar had a pretty bad temper. Do you remember a story that we learned a few weeks ago where we saw how angry King Nebuchadnezzar got? Do you remember what that story was? It was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace. And do you remember what King Nebuchadnezzar ordered to happen because he was so angry? He ordered that the furnace be heated 7 times hotter. Well, this time, King Nebuchadnezzar was so angry that he said, "I made a decree that every wise man in all of Babylon be killed." Wow. You know what? Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they weren't in that group of wise men that went before the king. So they had no idea what had happened. Now, Arioch, the commander of the king's guard, he was the one that was put in charge of killing the wise men. And so he went out to track them all down, and he tracked down Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And when he came to them, Daniel said in a very tactful way, he said, "Arioch, what has happened that has made the king make such a decree?" And so Arioch explained what had happened, and Daniel went to the king, and he asked the king for time so that he might interpret the dream. Well, who do you think Daniel went to for help? Daniel knew there was only one place to go. He had to go to God. So he went home and he talked to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and he explained to them what had happened and what was going on. And he asked them to pray with him and to plead with God that God would reveal this mystery to them. And so that night, God did reveal the mystery to Daniel. He gave him the dream and he gave him the interpretation. So Daniel went to Arioch and he asked him to take him to the king. He said, "You don't have to kill anybody. Take me to the king and I'll interpret the dream." And so he went to the king, and the king said, he looked at Daniel and he said, "Are you able to tell me what my dream was and interpret it for me?" And what do you think Daniel said? If you think Daniel said yes, stand up. Okay. If you think Daniel said no, stand up. Daniel said no. Daniel said, "No, nobody is able to do what the king said. No one living on earth." Why would Daniel say that? Well, because Daniel said that and a little bit more. Daniel said, "No, king, no one on earth is able to do what you've asked. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. And in fact, O king, he has given you this dream, and it's a dream of the future. And he didn't explain it to me because I'm so wise. He explained it to me so that you, O king, could understand what you dreamt. And this was your dream. You dreamed of an enormous statue. It was dazzling and amazing, awesome. Its head was of gold, pure gold. Then its chest and its arms were made of silver. Its belly and its thighs were made of bronze. Its legs were made of iron, and its feet were mixed with iron and baked clay. And then there came a stone that was cut out of a mountain, and it was not cut by human hands. And this stone went and it smashed the feet of the statue. And everything was smashed to pieces. The gold, the silver, the bronze, the iron, and the baked clay was all smashed to little pieces. And then they were so small that the wind came and it blew them away, and they weren't there anymore. And then that rock, it became a huge mountain, so huge that it filled the entire earth. That is your dream, O king. And this is the interpretation. O king, that gold, the gold head, that was you, O king, because God has made you the king over all these other kings. In fact, you're king over a vast land, over the people, over the animals, and over the birds. So you are this head of gold. Then after you, after your kingdom, the Babylonian kingdom, another kingdom will come, the silver. And it won't be quite as good as the gold. It's still great, but it won't be as great. And then after that kingdom, another kingdom will come, the bronze. And that kingdom will not be as good as the first or second kingdom. And then there'll be a fourth kingdom. And that fourth kingdom will come with an iron. Iron smashes everything, and in that way, the same way, the iron will smash the other kingdoms. And then you saw that actually at the base, the feet, they were mixed iron and clay. Well, you see, this kingdom will be very strong, but there'll be parts of it that are going to be very brittle, like baked clay, and easily broken. And then, O king, you saw that stone cut out of a mountain, but not with human hands. And then it came and it smashed that statue and all those gold, silver, bronze, iron, and clay into tiny little pieces and completely destroyed them. And then it became a huge mountain that filled the entire earth. That, O king, represents a kingdom that God is going to set up. And that's a kingdom that will destroy all the kingdoms that came before it, and it will be a kingdom that lasts forever. Well, King Nebuchadnezzar, that proud king, he was so amazed by what Daniel said. And then Daniel said, "O king, the great God has revealed this to you. And these things are going to happen in the future. And this dream, O king, it's true. And this interpretation is trustworthy. Well, King Nebuchadnezzar, he bowed with his face right down on the ground before Daniel. And he said to Daniel, he ordered gifts to be brought to him, and he said, Daniel, your God is the God of gods. He is the Lord of kings. He is the revealer of mysteries, for he has given you the interpretation of this mystery. And then King Nebuchadnezzar, he made Daniel ruler over the entire province of Babylon, and he gave him gifts. And at Daniel's request, he made Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to be administrators in that kingdom. If you want to read this story for yourself, you can find it in the Old Testament, in the book of Daniel, chapter 2. Now, I want to add one thing. For King Nebuchadnezzar, this dream was of the future. But for us, this dream is the past. These things have happened in the past. And so it's true. The prophecy came true. After Babylon, the gold, came another kingdom that wasn't quite as strong, and that was the Persians. And then after the Persians came a third kingdom, the bronze, and that was the Greeks, led by Alexander the Great. And then after that was the iron, and it was the Romans, and they came with a fist of iron, and they ruled with a fist of iron. And so we see that just like Daniel said, the dream, it was true. And the interpretation, it was trustworthy. And why? Because it came from God. See you next time.